joined yet or not. We'll give everybody a minute to get going while I get all set up so I can answer the comments here. While we're doing that, let me just give the disclaimer I always do that this is a weekly show that I do, weekly live broadcast, pretty much every Thursday night. Sometimes life gets in the way, can't make it, but I try to do it every Thursday night. And I don't really have a topic planned out. It's just a ask me anything session. So, leave a comment, let me know you're here, ask a question if you have a question. If you have something you want to talk about, leave it in the comments. I do my best to answer every single comment that comes in. And if I don't, for some reason, got to adjust the camera for a second here. Sorry. If I don't get to your question for some reason, just, ask it again. You can watch the chats. You can kind of see where I'm at in the chat session. So if I passed you up, feel free to ask again. I'll do my best to get to it. So, all right. Hey, Walt's here early today. Hello to you, Walt, and Isabella, and Sophia, and Ethan from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Hello to you, Boris. And who's that? Bluesman Sasquatch Chaser. Sorry, it's a little warm in here. You're going to probably see my head shining. I'm starting to sweat already, and we're just getting started. So, who else? Outside in Georgia, hello to you. Hope you guys are having a great evening, having a great week. I think the camera's off a little bit. Let's turn it a little bit more towards me. So, all right. Isabella says, hey, Chris, my bunnies died today and we only have the babies. Oh, no, I'm so sorry to hear that. Unfortunately, those things happen. If you're going to be raising animals, sometimes some of them are going to die. But I am sorry to hear that. Hopefully the babies are old enough to be able to make it on their own. And hopefully they do well. I'm so sorry you have to go through that, though. Ethan says, what's the minimum amount of time or minimum amount of quail to start with? I'm wanting to start small. Well, the minimum amount would be 1, but you probably don't want to do that. I would start, if you want to start with a small group, and that's smart, start with a small group. Know what you're getting into before you go overboard. Don't overwhelm yourself. I would start with maybe 5, so 4 hens and a rooster, or 6, 5 hens and a rooster, something like that. That's a pretty good ratio to start with. That'll give you fertile eggs, so you'll be able to incubate, and if you want to ramp up, you can. And it'll give you enough egg production that you'll be able to get kind of your feet wet, so to speak. So that would be a good, I think, small starting size to start with. All right, Itchituckney Creek Kennels. Boy, that was hard to say. Yeah, long time no see, no kidding. I always have a hard time with that name for some reason. Jakir is here and says, hey, Chris, nice to see you. Hope you're doing well. Regards from the UK. Thanks for staying up late. It's got to be like, midnight there right now? Thanks for staying up late, joining us on the live broadcast. I appreciate that. Sophia says, what happens if I hatched out quails and almost every single one of them is male? Well, if I hatch out quails and every single one of them is male, then I just plan on dinner in about 6 to 8 weeks. But that's just the way I handle the extra males in my household. As far as why all of them were male, it's just the luck of the hatch. There is some correlation between temperature and what minor correlation between those two. Between temperature and what gender hatches out. It won't change the gender of the eggs, but if you had like 30 eggs and only 15 of them hatched and they were all male, that could be part of the reason is that your temperature may have been running, and I'm forgetting now, I think it's a little bit warmer means females will more likely to hatch, a little bit cooler, maybe it's the other way around. I can't remember. But, if your temperature is running just a little bit off, that could be why all you got was males. But again, sometimes it's just luck of the draw. So, you just can't help it. It just happens. Nothing you can do about it, unfortunately. All right. Pasha Morgan says, hey, Chris, it's been a while. Rabbit had 4. Awesome. Congratulations on your new babies. Good to hear it. The homie Homestead said, good evening from Jeffco, that's Jefferson County, I think, right? Jefferson County, Missouri. Where is Jefferson County? Is that up near Kansas City? I think it is. Well, hello. Another Show Me State here. Always glad to have you guys here. Walt says, weather Gerser predicted heavy, weather Gerser, is that what you call the weather forecaster, I guess? Predicted heavy rain, so I canceled work outdoors. We got about an hour of drizzle. Oh, that's too bad. And hopefully you're not hurting for the work so bad. You just got an extra day off, hopefully. All right, Exotic Keeper says, what do you mix percentages with your quail poo to compost? Good question. Okay, if you want to compost it, I mean, it's just like composting anything else. You just figure that as the green or the nitrogen ingredient, and you want to mix some kind of carbon in with it. So that would be, typically you think of those as browns. So, dead leaves, shred them up. They'll do work better. You could even use cardboard shredded up, newspaper, not the glossy ones, just the regular ones. Shred that up. Even grass clippings would work just fine. You want to do it about a 1-to-1 ratio by volume, so not by weight, but by volume. Chances are, like depending on what you're using, if you're using grass clippings or something like that, they're going to break down pretty quick. So you may have to add more eventually. You can usually tell pretty easily though if it smells. So if you've got all that stuff piled up together, you mixed it all together with all that carbon material, and you give it just a little while, and all that stuff starts to break down, and then it starts to smell like, well, like quail manure, like a sewer or something like that. Then add some more carbon into it and stir it, turn it up. And stirring it doesn't mean you don't have to stir it like you would a pot, just shovel it from one pile into another to kind of mix it together a little bit, and that'll help it to compost down. Hopefully that answers that question for you. I did a whole video on making compost a while back. I don't remember what I called it, but I went through a lot of those details, and they're not specific to quail manure, but it's the same process. Whether you're composting quail manure, whether you're composting rabbit manure, grass clippings, vegetable scraps, any of that, it's all the same thing. Walt's coming in with a good suggestion. Let the grass clippings dry for a couple of days because of a lot of moisture. I don't necessarily do that. I just throw my grass clippings right on the compost pile. The moisture is actually pretty good for compost, but it's a good idea. It's not a bad idea, especially if your quail manure is a little bit on the damp side, to let that stuff dry out for just a couple of days. Otherwise, I think what Walt's getting at is it will start to, if it goes anaerobic, if you've got too much moisture in there and there's not enough air, then it will start to smell like a sewer. It'll smell bad, and that means just stir it up when it does that, and let it dry out just a little bit, and that'll help. All right, where are we at here? Gator Green says, hey Chris, I wish you could see my property. I learned a lot from your videos with gardening and rabbits and quails, but I also have pigs, a goat, and ducks. I wish I could see it too. I'm so glad that you found my videos helpful. Thank you for letting me know that. I appreciate it. And send some pictures. If you're in the Facebook group, post some photos in there, or take a quick video, post it in there. I'd love to see it. All right, Jakir says, one of my female quail has gone bald in a cage full of females. Is it normal, and why? Do the feathers grow back? If so, how long does it take? Well, I wouldn't say it's normal in a cage full of females. Are you sure you don't have a rooster in there somewhere? That's a good chance that you do. The other things that can cause that, though, if they're molting, although usually that's not their head. Usually that's more like the back. They start losing feathers down their back, and they look a little scruffy, but they don't go completely bald from that. It could be the other birds picking on it. If so, that's not that abnormal. But usually that's not the top of the head. Usually that's going to be more like around the face and those kinds of things. So if you're seeing that, that's probably the other birds picking on the bird. And usually if you just give them some time, they'll get over that. And the feathers will grow back. It usually takes a couple of weeks, maybe a month, for them to grow back completely. It's not really a big issue. So, Isabel's got to go. She's probably already gone. But hey, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. And you have a good evening. Small Wooden Boat says, hey Chris, what's the max age difference of chicks in the brooders? Thanks for all you do. Okay, I think what you're asking me is like, do you want to mix older chicks with younger chicks? And if so, what kind of is the maximum age difference that you would want to mix in the brooder box? I wouldn't mix anything more than about a week old with newborn hatches. Give them maybe a week difference, because there is the older they get, the less that age difference really matters that much. But especially when they're young, I just thought of something. Do you call them newborns or newly hatched? Either way, you knew what I meant. What was I saying? Okay, when they're young like that, when they first come out of the egg, they pretty much double in size every day for the first week and a half. So I wouldn't go more than a week old birds with newly hatched birds. There's a good chance that they'll get trampled on. Now, once they get a little bit older than that, say you've got week and a half old birds, and you could probably go with 2.5 week to 3.5 week or 3 week old birds in with a week old birds, or I think it would be okay like that. I just worry about the newly hatched ones getting trampled by the older birds until they get a little bit of size and a little bit of sturdiness to them, so to speak. So I've never really tried to mix birds in the brooder box like that. So I don't know exactly, but hopefully that helps. And I think I see your comment saying that was exactly what you were looking for. So good. Glad I got it answered. Let's see. Pasha says, Rosie, my rabbit, had 4 kits a month ago. They are doing great. Fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm sorry, I read another comment, made me laugh. Walt got me here. Yeah, guesser. That makes more sense. Weather guesser, not gerser. I wasn't sure. Usually I can make out the typos because I make plenty of them myself, so I understand them, but that one got me. So sorry. So Pasha, congratulations on your 4 kits. I'm so glad to hear they're doing well, and hopefully they continue to do well. 4 weeks old, they're well on their way, so they're probably past most of the danger parts anyway. I don't know what that means, Exotic Keeper. Show me reppin' XD 816. I don't know what you're saying. I'm sorry. I'm lost on that. So Abigail says, in a false pregnancy, what day should you remove the nest box? Well, I have always been of the opinion, wait at least 35 days. But I had somebody the other day talk about a rabbit that they had that consistently gives birth on day 40. So you might go, you're going 30 days anyway. You might just go ahead and leave it in there until day 40 just to be sure, and then go ahead and remove the nest box, and you can pretty much count it up as either a false pregnancy or a failed pregnancy or something like that. So, let's see. Rob says, hello from Alabama again. We really enjoy your channel. Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate that. And Alabama, I don't think I've ever been to Alabama. That's one of the places I would like to visit someday. The Homie Homestead says, just south of St. Louis. Okay, that's where Jefferson County is. We'll be doing our first hatching of quail soon. Well, good luck with your hatch. Hope it goes very, very well. Good evening to you, Lisa. Lisa Hensley says, good evening to all. Kinfolk Farm is here and says, what's up, Chris? Couldn't wait till you go live. Just want to say thanks so much for everything. I got about 80% of quail hatching right now. We have 48 eggs. Fantastic. Congratulations on that. I'm so glad to hear it. And hey, thanks for coming in and letting us know. I appreciate it. And for joining the live broadcast. Good to hear from you. Tom says, hey, Chris, ended 2018 with 195 quail and 80 rabbits in the freezer. 2019 brings 30 chickens to the Beaver Creek Homestead. Thanks for the tutelage. Well, thank you so much for joining the broadcast. Thank you so much for watching the videos. I'm so glad to hear that you're finding some use out of that. And it sounds like things are going fantastic for you. So congratulations. All right, Danny says, is it fine to mix the quail feed waste in with compost? Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're talking about like the wasted feed that they waste. Yeah, absolutely. Throw that in there. In fact, you don't even have to compost that stuff. That's actually a pretty good rabbit feed, quail feed, any small animal feed, any of that kind of stuff. Throw it right on your garden if you want to. And it's a pretty good, fertilizer, organic matter to add to your garden. It doesn't have to be composted. So if it gets in with your quail manure while you're composting, yeah, it's perfectly all right. All right. Jakir says, if I separate an injured quail, can I reintroduce that same quail into the flock of quail once it has healed, a couple of weeks to heal, etc.? You can. You're probably going to end up with some fighting. Anytime you bring new birds into the flock, they're almost always going to pick on that new bird. And if you remove a bird from them for a period of a couple of weeks, it becomes a new bird when it rejoins the flock. So it's probably going to get picked on quite a bit. So if you're removing it because it was getting picked on to begin with, well, you might have some problems when you go to reintroduce it in there again. Most of the time, what I do, I just leave them in there, and usually they're okay. I watch them pretty close, and every once in a while, I'll have an overly aggressive bird that will pick on the other bird, and it can really do some serious damage. If I can pick out which bird that is, I remove it from the flock, leave the other one in there. A lot of the times what happens, it seems like, is they'll start picking on the new bird. They beat it up pretty good, and then once they do that, they're kind of like, okay, we put you in your place, and they just leave it alone for a while. And they heal up pretty easily, pretty well. I have had some birds lose an eye, but even the birds that lost an eye, you would never know. They just act just like any other bird. They heal up just fine, continue to lay eggs, no problems. They're really tough little animals. They can handle quite a bit. You might give it some spots to kind of hide in so it can get away from the other birds. Maybe a small box or something like that. It doesn't even have to have a top on it necessarily, but just a walled off section that it can get in. Make sure you don't want it trapped in there. So make sure it has, somewhere where it can get out one side and out the other side. So if the other birds come in, it can move out. But you might give it something like that to where it can kind of get behind and hide, so it's not right there in their face all the time. Hopefully that makes sense. Those are a couple of suggestions I have. All right. All right, Millie Sharhan. I think I got that right. Is it Millie? I don't know. Milliy. I'm going to guess Millie. I probably got it wrong. If I did, I'm sorry. Says, hi, I have a 5-hole rabbit cage. Was thinking of using 2 for quail. Do you think that was okay? Also, what kind of wire mesh to use for flooring for quail? Yeah, I think that's probably okay. I don't see any reason why you couldn't use 2 of those cages for quail and keep them right next to your rabbits. What I would do is I would replace the floor, or at least run, rabbit cage typically has like it's usually like 1 by 1/2 inch square or something like that. And that's a little bit big for the quail feet. I don't like it myself, so I like to go with a 1/2 inch hardware cloth. Hardware cloth's plenty sturdy enough for quail. It's not like you don't want to use hardware cloth for rabbits. 2 reasons: it's not sturdy enough. Second of all, the wire mesh is it's too small of a gauge, so the wires are too small around, and it will hurt the rabbit's feet. But quail don't have that much weight behind them, so it's fine to use hardware cloth with them, and it's a lot cheaper than buying that kind of cage wire. So that's what I would go with on that. Hopefully that answers that for you. All right, Outside in Georgia says, next Friday is locked down for me for my first batch of quail eggs. Well, good luck with your hatch. I hope it goes very, very well. First batch is always exciting, so fingers crossed, and I hope it goes well. Nashir, I'm not sure if I got that right. Nashir Vaughn, I think it is, says, yesterday I got about 70% quail hatching. That's a great hatch rate. Congratulations. Job well done. All right, the Bluesman says, just hatched out my first emu while on live stream here. Really? I have never hatched emu before. That's got to be interesting. I know emus can go for quite a bit of money. There for a while, there was a craze, and there was a lot of people not too far from here that had emus. I don't see them very often anymore. But all right, John says hello from Bonnie, Illinois. Hello to you, John. Glad you can make it. Kinfolk Farm says, outside in Georgia, what's up, neighbor? Oh yeah, 2 Georgia people here. Living Our Dream Homestead says, hey, got my new controller and sensor for the Little Giant. Was definitely the sensor. Good. I think I remember talking about that last week. Hopefully the company took care of you. Miller Manufacturing is a company that makes Little Giant incubators. If you ever have a problem, contact them. The one time I did have a problem with the incubator, my temperature sensor went out, or the thermostat went out. And they were just fantastic to deal with. I mean, quick. They just turned right around. Oh, you got a problem? No problem. We're going to say, I mean, they didn't ask me when I bought it, how old it was, nothing. They just, okay, we'll send you a brand new one. And it was there in like a couple of days. So very good customer service. All right. Small Wooden Boat says, thanks. That's what okay, already got that one earlier. Walt says, newborn chicks don't know what to do, so they might get pushed out of the feed and the water. Yeah, I think you're referring to being able to put, mix your birds in the brooder, older birds with younger birds. And Walt, you're probably right on that. I wouldn't put brand new birds in with even 4 or 5 day old birds. I think I would give them a little bit, like maybe wait till they're about 4 or 5 days old before you mix them in with those other older birds. Hey, to you, Lou Martinez says hello. And I think I think I'm going to pronounce your name wrong again, but is it Zinga Tobin? My bird stopped laying. What could cause this? They are only 5 months old. Okay, it can be caused by a number of different things. If you recently moved them from one enclosure to another, that's a stress factor on them. And anytime they get some kind of stress factor, whether it's moving, and it could be just moving them from one cage to another. That's all it takes. If you have like a predator that's pestering them, really drastic weather changes, like it goes from like 80 one day down to 30 the next. That doesn't happen very often, but when it does, that can throw them into to stop laying for a little while. If you've got them inside, or I don't know what part of the world you're located in. So if you've got them maybe, if you're going through the time of the year where it's the shorter days, that can do it as well. They need 14 hours a day of light to lay consistently. So if you're going into like your fall or your winter and the days are starting to get shorter, that may be why they stop laying too. Those are really the most common reasons why they stop laying. Sometimes if you do a drastic change with feed, like you go from a 25-30% protein down to a 15% protein, something like that, that can have an effect on their egg laying. Usually any of those stress factors that I mentioned, they're going to pick back up laying. Just give them a couple of weeks, usually about 2 weeks, they'll start laying again. But if it's a light issue, you may have to add some external light in order to get them to actually start laying again. So hopefully I got that covered for you and got that answered. Jakir says there's only 4 females in the cage, no males at all, but the feather pecking is exactly the same place as if a male were mating. Perhaps there might be a transgender quail in there. Hey, there might be, you never know. Or maybe you've got a rooster that just looks like a hen. Who knows? That kind of seems to be what it would be. Interesting, though. I don't think I've ever had that, but who knows? All right. Kurt Stewart's here and says hello. Says hi. How is everything? Just got done separating my quail. Everything's going very well here. Thank you. Hope things are going well for you too. Lou Martinez says, could you talk a bit about your solar lights? Yeah, I think you're talking about the solar lights. Unfortunately, we tried to run that in Kickstarter. It did not get received very well. Didn't get very many donations. I shouldn't say donations. Didn't get very many pledges. Nobody actually had to spend any money because I didn't meet the funding goal. And it ended a couple of weeks ago, unsuccessfully funded. So right now I'm back at the drawing board trying to figure out how to fund it so I can bring it to market. But yeah, it's working great for me. I mean, I've got the prototypes and they work fantastic. I mean, you set the time on the timer, what time you want it to come on, and it comes on every morning at that time, goes off every day when the sun comes up, because of the timer, it doesn't sense the sun and go off, but I set it to go off at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and it comes on at I want to say it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, something like that. Stays on from 4 to 7 pretty much every single morning, even in the wintertime. That's what I was really concerned with, I should say, is if the solar power panel would charge it enough and the battery would handle enough to get a good enough charge to keep it going all through the winter in the shortest days. And it did just fine. Shortest days of winter, came on just as bright as could be, and stayed on 4 hours at a time every day. It was great. So, all right, Walt says, just subdivided the brooder for a while. Oh, just subdivide the brooder for a while. Hey, that's a good suggestion too. You can always just put a barrier up there, and then you've got an area where you can keep older birds and younger birds. Good thinking, Walt. All right, Exotic Keeper says, show me state representing. XD is a closed smile. Okay, closed aisle smile. I got it. Okay, that makes sense. 81 area code is KC area. Yeah, I knew 816 is KC area. Okay, yeah, Walt knew that. He said repping means representing his area code here. Okay, I got it now. I'm a little slow tonight. Sorry. I should have got that. Makes sense now. Perfect sense. Jim says, have you tried growing fruit trees yet? I do have a couple of fruit trees. Says, I've had very good success with jujube trees, like mini apples. Interesting. No, I've got several fruit trees. I've got, let's see, a peach tree, a couple of plum trees. I've got a pawpaw tree, which, I've got one pawpaw tree. They're not self-fertile, so I was a little concerned. But it actually, it bloomed this year, but it actually looks like there might be a couple of fruit growing on it. They're not big enough for me to tell for sure that they're fruit yet, but it may have gotten pollinated. Pawpaws are native to this area, but I live in town. They're usually found in near riverbanks and the woods, and not in town. I don't know of anybody that's got a pawpaw tree anywhere now near around me. So maybe I might have some pawpaw off that. The peach tree, problem I've got with the peach tree, it's loaded with peaches. And last year, the frost got it all, so we didn't get any peaches growing on it. The frost, it bloomed out, and then the frost hit and it killed everything. But the year before, we got a huge amount of peaches on it. It was just loaded with peaches, and the squirrels got every single one of them. They didn't even wait till they got ripe. They would pull them off the tree, eat them, and just spit the seed out there on the ground. So I'm gonna have to do some cleaning out of squirrels. I don't mind sharing with the squirrels. I've said this before. But the squirrels don't share with me. They are incredibly stingy, so I may have to clean out a few squirrels. We've got an owl living here now. I hear him pretty much every morning, and a couple of hawks that are nested up in the tree. I was hoping they might keep the squirrel population down. I don't think owls, I mean, it's a pretty good size owl. I've seen it. It's about that tall. I mean, it's plenty big enough to take a squirrel, but they're not usually hunting at the same time squirrels are active, so it's probably not going to have much of an effect on the squirrel population. And the hawks, I think, are Cooper's hawks, so they really focus more on like songbirds and things and not squirrels. So I may have to just do it myself. I don't know. All right. Jules says, have you ever, is it Jules Oleg Vids? Jules Oleg, I'm just going to call you Jules. Hopefully that's okay. Says, have you ever had button quail? I'm currently incubating them. I have never personally had button quail. I know they're really popular. Lots of my viewers have button quail. They're very similar in a lot of ways to Coturnix, but I personally have not ever raised button quail myself. Good luck with your hatch, though. I hope it goes well. All right, and Abigail says, today's day 40. She looks, but she looks pregnant, so I don't know what's up with that. Maybe delayed pregnancy. It could be. You might give her a couple more days just to be sure, but honestly, I don't know that I've ever seen a rabbit that looked pregnant. I mean, yeah, they kind of look pregnant if you think they're pregnant, but not really much difference than they look any other time. So I don't know if I'd use that as a guide to tell. I mean, you could try palpating her, reaching up underneath her belly, and you'll have to kind of push a little bit hard back, towards the abdomen, and see if you can feel anything in there. If there are babies and she's that close to being, to having them, they should be pretty easier to feel anyway. It's a little bit tricky still nonetheless. But yeah, you might give her a couple more days just to be sure. All right. Living Our Dream Homestead said, what kind of thermometer you use to calibrate your incubator? I use I don't think I have it in here right now. I don't go with anything fancy. It's just a cheap, it's non-digital. It's a dial type thermometer that can be calibrated. It's got a nut on the back that you can turn, but like a meat thermometer type thing. The only thing to look for is make sure it goes down low enough. A lot of meat thermometers, they won't read below like 200 degrees. So you want to make sure it reads down. I like to have one that reads down to 0, and it was like $5 or $6. It wasn't expensive. I always use 2 of them. That way I know that if the incubator and the thermometer don't agree, if 2 of the 3 agree, then I know that that's the right temperature. So that's what I always use 2 of them. You might look into some medical thermometers too. They're incredibly precise and not that expensive. So that may be a way to go as well. All right. Sonny says, Chris, I used to raise quail. Oh, I used to raise pharaoh quail with my dad. We had about 1,500 to 2,000. That's a lot of them. I was 14. I am 70 now and want to start raising a small flock. Thanks for all your advice and instructions. Well, thank you so much for watching the videos. I'm glad that you're finding them helpful and interesting. 1,500 to 2,000 when you were 14. That's a lot of birds. Hopefully, I don't know that you're planning on going that high again, but hopefully your new birds go well. It sounds like you probably got a pretty good experience with them. I'm sure you're going to do great. Zinga, hopefully I got your name right again, says, my birds stopped laying. What are some of the reasons for this? They're only 5 months. I think I answered that already. If not, let me know again. We'll address it again. All right. Itchy Tuckney Creek says, going to pick up some new jumbo Coturnix quail. Supposed to be some large, nice, meaty birds. Can't wait to see what they bring to the table. Nice. Congratulations on your new birds. Hopefully they are nice, big, meaty birds. Where are we at here? I'm losing track. Owen. Owen says, hi, how are you doing? I'm doing well. Thank you, Owen. Appreciate it. And hopefully you are too. All right. So Itchituckney Creek again says, also just added a few goats to Itchituckney Creek Game Farm. I really have thought about adding a couple of goats. I would like to have some. My neighbor has a couple of goats. I like them. They're neat little animals, friendly as can be. They always want some attention when you go near the fence. And I don't know, maybe I will. I'd have to build some new fencing and, a couple of, maybe, a little shelter of some kind for them. I may do that at some point. Who knows? All right, Rob says, need 50 likes. Everyone, please click the like, thumbs up button for Chris. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. John says, have ever keep quail on the ground? If so, any tips you can share? I have never tried to keep them on the ground, and in my opinion, that would be incredibly difficult to do. I mean, if you're going to keep them in like a big aviary type thing, that's fine. I've seen plenty of people do those kinds of things, and I think that would, it works. There's nothing wrong with it. The hard part for me, I think, would be keeping it clean, because they produce a tremendous amount of waste. So you really wouldn't want to go very high with the, high density. You need to keep the numbers fairly small for the space. And whereas a raised cage, I always recommend one bird per square foot. I think I would probably go one bird per 6 square feet or 5 square feet, in a ground cage. Otherwise, it's going to just fill up with droppings like every day, and it's going to be a pain to keep clean. The other thing about keeping them on the ground, depending on where you live, this may or may not be a big risk for you, but they are more susceptible to parasites and diseases and fleas and all those kinds of things living on the ground. Now again, that may not be a big issue in your area. The only other thing I would worry about is predators. You're going to have a very secure cage. Everything wants to eat quail, so you're going to have everything from neighborhood dogs and cats to hawks to raccoon to possum to everything, skunks, fox, everything will eat those quail. Snakes, so you just got to have a very secure cage. Those would be my biggest tips for you, but I have not done that myself. All right. Ben says, I have not been here for a while. Do you still have your little giant incubator? I do. Says, I just built a homemade cabinet incubator with the GQF UNKUKIT Unca kit. I don't know if that's what it is. It's only $130 on Amazon. To be continued. Nice. I'd like to see how that works for you. Let us know. Make sure you come back and let us know. I've seen some homemade incubators. Some people build them that seem to work pretty well. I'm still using the little giant. I don't really hatch out more than, that'll hatch out like 80, well, I think it's 120 eggs, I think. Maybe it's not that many. Maybe. Either way, it hatches out plenty. I don't really ever need to hatch out more than that. I'm just hatching for, food for my family and stuff. So, it's really, it really suits me just fine. All right. Pondums Outdoors says, I've had 2 quail hatch and they can't stand up, but legs work. Ever had this problem? It sounds like splayed leg if they can't stand up. And if they're new, let's see, is there a follow-up to that? No. Okay, so yeah, sounds like splayed leg or something very similar to that. If they can't stand up, can't put weight on their legs, you might try to build some kind of brace or something, like a shot glass or something like that that forces them kind of to stand up with their legs underneath them. If you address it quick enough, usually that'll fix the problem. Birds are just like a lot of animals when they're first born. They need to get up and move around fairly quickly. Their legs are not real strong, but they build those muscles up very, very quickly. So you need to get them up and get them moving around a little bit, or it may get worse. I don't know that I've ever, I've had some splayed leg problems before. Not a lot of them, but I have had some. But I don't know if I've ever had a situation where the bird's legs work just fine, but they can't stand up. Now, if they're a day or two old, maybe they just don't want to stand up. They do tend to lay around a lot. They do tend to kind of just, sometimes they look like they're dead. You come in here and your birds are just laying on their, they look like they're dead. You go up to them and they just hop up and start running around, no problem. So, yeah, Walt's got a good suggestion too. He says soft pipe cleaners as hobbles. You can do that as well. All right, Exotic Keeper says first hatch is always fun. So it was the 2nd, 5th, 12th. Yeah, all of them are fun. You're right. Yeah, Walt's got a good comment on keeping birds on the ground. He says a lot of bending over and easier for predators to get the quails on the ground. Yeah, I agree. I think it would be too. Raymond says lockdown at 10 a.m. today. Well, good luck with your hatch. I hope it goes well. All right, Dave says, I hope you don't mind, Dave. I'm just going to call you Dave. Says, pluck the like button, good people. Just saying. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Ben says, I bought 3 little giant egg turner to put in a cabinet I built. Inside, I mounted the Inca kit inside. Works great. It holds 120 chicken eggs and 360 quail eggs. That's a pretty big incubator. Hopefully it goes really, really well. Living Our Dream Homestead says, would the higher protein feed have a difference on growth versus the lower protein feed? It can have a little bit of a difference on growth. Especially the young birds really need the higher protein to develop their muscle structure, to develop their bone structure. So if you're feeding them a very low, and I say very low, that would be anything under like 17, 18%. That can definitely have an effect on them. It's probably going to have more of an effect on not necessarily how fast they grow, maybe, but you would end up with like more leg problems, bone problems, some deformities, some of those kinds of things as they try to develop. All right. Chris says, good evening from New York. Weather has been crazy here. Too cool to plant anything, but greens too wet also. Do you know anything about growing tobacco? I don't smoke. Friend wants to grow for ceremony use. I don't know anything about growing tobacco. I've never tried to grow it before, but I would think, it's just like growing any other kind of leafy plant. I would say, treat it a lot like, I don't know. You're gonna have to look up, but my guess would be, treat it a lot like you were growing lettuce or kale or something like that. Put it in the ground, make sure it's got enough water, should do just fine. That would be my guess. Kurt Stewart says, I bought a checkered giant doe and she's long and compact. I brought her to my Flemish giant. I hope I get some nice bunnies out of her. I hope you do too. I've not had good luck with the giants. I don't know that I've ever tried a checkered giant, but Flemish giant, giant chinchillas. Actually, giant chinchillas weren't too bad. But the biggest problem I have with them is they grow out so slow. So it took the babies, 15, 16 weeks to get up to size to butcher them. And there is a little bit of a higher bone to meat ratio. So there's not quite as much meat on a, 5-pound Flemish giant as there is on a 5-pound New Zealand white. That makes sense, hopefully. But hopefully it works out well for you. All right. Bouvier Aaron says, hi, Chris. I now have 13 bunnies, 4 to 6 weeks, and 9 to 4 weeks. Just put the 6-week-old group into their own cage. The mom on the younger group is now biting her babies when they nurse. So they're 6 weeks old. Oh, okay. She's probably trying to get them to wean. I wouldn't worry about that too much. A lot of the times when they start to get to that age, 6 weeks, it's about the time they're starting to wean off anyway. And she's probably just saying, look, I'm sick of it. You're done. You don't need any right now. She doesn't have any other way to do it. So that would be my guess on that. As long as she's not like seriously hurting them and you're drawing blood and those kinds of things, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Microfarm Starter says hello to everyone. And Patrick Schulte, I think I got it right. I just got 250 jumbo quail and put in the incubator. Awesome. Hopefully it goes well. Good luck on your hatch. And hello to you, Raymond. Small Wooden Boat says, Abigail, you can palpate the dough. Yeah, I think that was the dough we were talking about earlier. John Sweeten, you said use red pepper for your squirrel problem. I've tried that. My experience with using red pepper sprays is, it kind of does deter them, but it doesn't, it stops them from taking the peach. In that case, it was tomatoes. Stops them from taking the tomato, but it doesn't stop them from taking a bite out of the tomato or a bite out of the peach. And they pretty much ruin it anyway. So what I had happen is I had squirrels after my tomatoes, and I tried some red pepper spray on it. You got to reapply it every time it rains, and they would come by, they would take a bite out of this tomato, and then they would take a bite out of that tomato, and then a bite out of that tomato, trying to find one that didn't have the red pepper on it. And they still ruined all my tomatoes. So it didn't really work well for me. Good suggestion, though. Jules says, okay, thanks for answering about the button quails. My first time. I hope they hatch. I'm sure they will. I hope they do, too. Walt says squirrel problem equals crossbow practice. Yeah, or air rifle practice. I don't think I got a better chance of getting them with the air rifle than I do the crossbow. Actually, I might be able to hit them easier with the crossbow. The problem with that is that a squirrel won't stop a crossbow bolt. And if they're up in a tree especially, it's going to keep going, a ways. And that may not be good. I live in town, so got to be careful. Gator Green says, one question for you, Chris. Do you ever process rabbits and then eat it right then? Yeah, you can absolutely do that. If you're quick about it, before rigor mortis sets in, you can definitely cook it and then eat it. Now, I don't think you mean process it and then just immediately eat it. I cook it first, but I think that's what you're getting at. Yeah, most of the time I don't do that, though. Most of the time, on processing day, if I'm going to eat anything, it's usually liver. The rabbit livers, I like rabbit liver. If you like liver at all, rabbit's a really mild liver, and it's great big. They've got a great big liver. So that's a good, that's my dinner usually on processing day, liver and onions. Really like that quite a bit. I don't usually eat the rabbits right away. I usually let them rest for a couple of days till rigor mortis passes. All right. Lou Martinez says, thank you, Chris, for all your educational videos. Well, thank you for watching. I appreciate that. Seems like we got the chat going pretty good tonight. How many people do we have in here? Does it tell me? 52. We got a pretty good group in here tonight. Let's see. Joyce says, can you show a good breed rabbit meat? Can I show a good breed? Well, can you, I'm not sure if I got what you're asking me, Joyce. Are you asking if, hey, Rhonda's here too. Hello, Rhonda. I'm sorry, Joyce, I'm kind of a little bit lost. I think maybe you're asking what's a good breed for meat rabbit. New Zealand whites are great. Californias are great. Silver fox. Those are the three that come to mind. Florida whites, that's another good breed. Even standard Rexes can be a good breed. Not the mini Rex, the standard Rex. They're a bigger rabbit. They can be a good breed. Honestly, it's hard to go wrong with a New Zealand white doe and a California buck. That's a pretty good combination. So those are ones that I would always recommend. Walt says, get an air gun, put out an ear of dried corn on a stick and zero the air gun at that range of the ear of corn. Put up some scrap wood, locate it in a safe location, sit on the patio with a Pepsi and wait. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I actually do occasionally, the dog likes to tree squirrels, and he'll go out in the backyard and tree them out in the back lot, you know, out behind my lawn. I just go out there and shoot them out of the tree, so I don't worry about it too much. Oh, and Joyce, you've got another question. Looks like good measurement for building a good rabbit cage. Yeah, my, where are we at here, Joyce? Okay, sorry, got distracted there. My rabbit cages are 30 by 36, and let's see, they're 18 inches tall. You want them tall enough to where the rabbit can stand up on their hind legs inside the hutch. You don't want them to have to be crunched over all the time. They do want to stand up. They want to be able to stretch out. But I find 30 inches by 36 inches is a good measurement. That's a pretty standard size rabbit cage. So anyway, I think that answers it. Hopefully it does. And Ben says, sorry, meant the Ink-U kit. Okay, that makes more sense. I think I have heard of that before. Jim, let's see, what do you say? What do you think of raising jumbo Coturnix quail outside in the desert, 110 in the summer? Is there any breeds that have less down feathers? Do you think they would be smart enough to use burrows? I'm not sure if they'll use burrows or not, Jim, but as long as you provide them with some kind of shade, preferably more than just shade of a hutch roof. Like if you can position them, if you have out in the desert, you probably don't have many trees, but you might be able to set them up, you know, like the south side of your house or the north side of your house, whichever side is, you know, facing away from the sun. Here it's the north side. Everything on the north side of my house gets shade most of the day. You know, that would help a little bit with that. Give them a way they can get out of the sun, give them plenty of fresh water. You could even use something like misting systems there to kind of keep the temperature down. Misting systems don't work for me. And don't mist the birds directly, you know, mist the hutch, that kind of thing. And the evaporation will keep the temperature down just a little bit, maybe a couple of fans even. You can run that on a solar system so it doesn't run up your electric bill, and I think it would be just fine. I think they do okay. 110 plus in the summer. You know, we get over 100 degrees here, not usually 110. That's a little high, but they do just fine here. It's not really a big problem, but you know, like I said, keep them in the shade. I can't use misting systems here because it's just too humid in the summer. It doesn't do any good. You know, a misting system works by, I mean, you mist it and the dry air, you know, the water evaporates, and that's what keeps it a little bit cool. But here you mist things and it just becomes a mess. I mean, water just hangs there. It doesn't evaporate because it's just too humid in the summertime. Exotic Keeper says, funny you mention everything will eat the quail. It was raining the other day and I opened the garage windows to have no screens in to let in the air. Stunk a bit. And I came back out and the cat was sleeping. I scared him when I opened the door and he ran in the sill on the opposite side of the garage. Okay, he was sleeping in the sill on the opposite side of the garage. Then the quail he gave no fricks about, and the birds even while my boys crowed. Oh, the cat didn't pay any attention to him, huh? You know, cats, I think they kind of figure out when they can and can't get to something when it's, you know, too much work. And, you know, like my raised hutches, I've had cats come out there and look at it and kind of walk around a little bit and then like, it's too much work, and they walk off. But yeah, if you keep them on the ground or, you know, you have them out there where they can get to them easily, they're going to eat them for sure. But yeah, funny story there. Rhonda says, my rabbit that I thought was having a hard time ended up being pregnant. I think I might have told you all about the baby rabbits because they're a week old today and doing well. I think I remember that. So congratulations on that. Good to hear. Wolfpack says, have 3 jumbo quail females who are 12 weeks old and have not yet laid their first egg. Is this normal? It's not really that abnormal. 12 weeks, you hear all these stories about 8 weeks, and usually 8 weeks is when they start laying. But sometimes they're a little bit later than that. Sometimes it takes them a little bit longer. And it also, again, depends on how much light, depends on a number of different things. So just give them a little bit longer. They're probably going to start laying like tomorrow. Now that you've asked it in a live broadcast, it seems like the birds love to do that. Walt's got a suggestion. He says, tobacco makes a lot of flowers, draws in pollinators, and needs a lot of nitrogen. Interesting. So you might be something if you have a good nitrogen source, if you've got rabbits, you've got rabbit manure, all those kinds of things will help quite a bit. Lots of compost. You can grow green beans around it. That might help too. Green beans are gonna, any kind of bean really, legumes are gonna add nitrogen to the soil instead of take it. So those might be things that would help with that too. All right. Chapman's Reptile says, Wolfpack, do you have about 14 hours of light? Yep, that was my question on that too. Light can have an effect on it for sure. Raymond says, can I put adult quail on 70% layer crumble if I'm just using eggs? You can do it. It's my personal opinion. They do better on a higher protein. I've read plenty of studies that say the adult birds don't need that higher protein, and 17% is a little bit on the low side. I don't think I'd want to go below 20%. Me personally, I think they do best on high protein. So I like to go with 20%, 25 or more percent. Right now I'm using a 30% game bird starter. All right, Sujak says, do you save the rabbit furs for any projects? No, I don't usually. Keep in mind when I'm butchering, it's usually, they're 8 weeks old, so they don't have their full adult coats on, and it's not a winter coat, so it's not a real heavy, thick coat. It's really not good for anything other than maybe just some craft projects. It's not good quality fur to be making clothing or gloves or any of those kinds of things out of. Now, you could definitely do it. It's just probably not going to hold up. It's probably not going to be really, really sturdy. So I don't mess with it right now. I may do at some point, but right now I don't. Wolfpack says, yes, here it's springtime, and there's at least 14 hours a day of light. I have a solar power light that kicks on and stays on for 3 hours after daylight. Sounds like plenty of light. You may just have to give them just a little bit longer. Walt's got the same opinion I do. He says game bird starter is better for layer quail. Yeah, I think that's my opinion on that as well. You can get away with lower protein. Plenty of people do it. But if you can get it, higher protein is going to be better. All right, Alexi says, what do you think about Sarama chicken for the homestead? It's a little bigger than a quail and quieter than a regular chicken. Well, I think it'd be just fine. I think if you're talking about a homestead where you live out in the middle, it depends on what you want to raise them for. Are you looking for eggs from them, or are you looking to raise them as a meat bird? If you're looking at raising them as a meat bird, I think you can't beat like the Cornish cross, some of those kinds of things that are more traditional meat birds. I don't know a lot about them, so I can't really give you a great feedback on how they are as a layer. But again, it just depends on what you're trying to get out of them. But yeah, I think they'd be fine. If that's what you want to raise it. Who's to tell you not to? Wolfpack says, I have been feeding them chick starter with 28% protein. 2 of the 5 females have begun laying eggs 2 weeks ago, but the other 3 have not yet. Yeah, sometimes you just have to give them a little while. Just wait. That's about the best you can do on that. You can't really force them to start laying. But again, chances are now that you've asked about it and everybody's giving you advice on it, they're probably going to start laying. It just seems to be the way it works half the time. I think it's almost like they're all sitting in the hutch and they're going, oh, he's asking people about it, now we can lay. Might want to make fun of you somehow. I don't know. All right, Sujak says, what about the Champagne d'Argent? I can't ever pronounce that word. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say it, but I think that's a French word. Is that Argent rabbits? I don't know how to pronounce it, but I know what the breed is. I'm familiar with them. And yeah, I think they make great meat rabbits. I don't know. They're very hard to find around here. You don't see them very often at all, but they are a good choice if you want to raise them for meat. They'd be fine. All right, John says, good squirrel dog is hard to beat. Yeah, my dog's not the best squirrel dog. He will chase squirrels in my backyard, and he will, chase them up a tree, and he'll bark and let you know they're up there and jump up in the tree. He just looks great. So I thought, well, he's going to be a good squirrel dog. So I took him out squirrel hunting. I mean, he does all those things, and he's good at that, but he won't, I trained him too well. He won't get more than about 60 feet away from me. So he won't go find the squirrels and tell me they're there. He just wants to, he wants to be there. Like if I see a squirrel and he sees it, he'll chase it up the tree for me. But like I said, he doesn't go out and actually find them. So he's not the best squirrel dog in the world. Walt says, my local feed store has game bird starter for $17.50 for 50 pounds. TSC 16% layer is $14.50. I go with the game bird. Yep. Oh, and he's got a good suggestion for the desert too. Shade cloth around the quail area. That's a good idea, Walt. Misters with a calcium filter to keep the nozzle from clogging. Yeah, that depends, I guess, a little bit on, what your water's like there. If you're in the desert, you've probably got pretty soft water, and that's probably not a big concern. Here in Missouri, we've got hard water, and it's not really calcium, it's limestone that's gonna build up on there. It looks like calcium. I guess it is kind of the same thing. I guess it's the calcium in the limestone, but either way, yeah, we've got the same problem here, and that's, yeah, it clogs up shower heads, it does all those things. I just got to replace my shower head like once every couple of years because it gets clogged up and doesn't work. Yeah, you absolutely can give Jules says, what vegetables can you give quail? Cooked chicken egg yolk to the chicks for protein. For that matter, you don't even have to just the yolk, the whole egg. Cook it, crumble it up so it doesn't look like an egg anymore, and you can feed it back to your birds, no problem. As far as vegetables, there's so many of them. I mean, there's so many things that you can feed them. Things you don't want to feed them, don't feed them onion, don't feed them, let's see, what else would you, avocado. You don't want to feed them apple seed. You can give them apple, but not apple seed. That's kind of the no list right off the top of my head. Don't give them iceberg lettuce either. Iceberg lettuce, don't feed any animal iceberg lettuce. It's not good for them. I like to eat it, and it's fine for us, but animals don't process it well. There's not very much nutrition in it at all, and it's mostly water and fiber, so it tends to give them diarrhea and dehydrate them. So stay away from that. But everything else most of it is pretty good. If you have a question about one, just do a Google search. Can quail eat, whatever vegetable? And you should be able to figure that out. It's too big of a list for me to list off here, and I can't say I can remember them all. All right, RSL 82568 says chinchilla rabbits is also a good meat breed. They are indeed. They also make great humble pets. Yeah, they're pretty cute rabbits. They're easy to handle from my experience, and they do make a good meat rabbit. Walt says it gets to 116 and very here in Southern California. Misters work great. Yeah, I imagine they would. I'm kind of disappointed they don't work here. We have just too high. The humidity's too high. It just doesn't work. Where are we at on time here? Oh boy, we're about to run out of time. We got about 8 minutes left here. Rhonda says, shockingly have cats, and they really don't mess with the quail, even when they get out. Interesting. Uh-oh, Danny's got a problem, says help. But let me get to Pondums Outdoors real quick, says I use heavy landscape fabric around the bottom of my pen that prevents predators from reaching through the wire. Around the bottom. Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. Now I understand what like a ground pen, and you run heavy landscape fabric around it so they can't reach through. That's a good idea. All right, Danny says, I made the water you had a video about, and my quail stopped laying. Does that mean they are not getting enough water? They were laying before. It could be. Chances are they're getting enough water. You can usually figure out if you go out there and you've got the water cups that I've got with the little plunger inside that, they hit that and the water comes out. Go out there and put your finger in there and fill it up with water, and just watch them for a few minutes. If they all just flock to that like crazy, like, oh, I got to get some water, then they're not getting any water. If they just kind of walk by it, or if one of them comes over and maybe takes a drink of it, but they're not, I mean, it's just normal, like no big deal, then they're probably getting plenty of water. You may have to actually do that once or twice. If they do flock to it, like I said, like, oh my gosh, I got to have the water, and they're all fighting over who gets it, then you may have to go out there and fill that up once or twice. Do that maybe morning, do it again at night, and chances are after a day or two, they'll figure it out, and you won't have to do that anymore. Give them, it's probably more along the lines of a change of some kind that stressed them out, so they'll start laying again. Give them a week or two, they'll pick back up. I wouldn't worry about it. All right. Yeah, Walt says the same thing. Any change in the hutch can stop them laying for a while. All right. Still doing good on times. Rhonda says, Sujak, I was going to use the fur for projects, but I noticed when you use the fur, you have to re-break the fur, which was a little annoying. I have pet mice. I ended up giving the first fur to them. Interesting. Raymond says, are you covering the Pepsi can to not advertise for free? No, I'm covering it because, I mean, this is like a koozie, you know, it's a cool, keeps it cool. It's so hot. I mean, right now it's probably, I don't know, it's probably 85 degrees in this room right now. So it's pretty warm, and this doesn't stay cold very long if I don't do that. All right. Walt says, laying age is like puberty. Different females go through puberty at different times, giving the rest of the females a little more time. Yeah, that's probably true. All right, Backyard Survivalist says, how much feed should a 1-week-old Coturnix be eating? Mine seem to be going through the feed really, really fast. Yeah, they eat like nonstop. That's all they do. They just sit around and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. So they're going to go through quite a bit. I mean, how much, it's hard for me to say. But they also waste a lot too. So if you've got, you'll see, you've got 1 week old. So they're probably, I mean, if anything, they're throwing it on the brooder floor and they're eating it off the brooder floor. But yeah, I mean, they'll eat a lot of feed for sure. I can't tell you exactly how much, but it is going to be a surprising amount. All right. R.L. Sanders says, what kind of profit can I reasonably expect from meat rabbits after costs of feed, etc., to get them to selling weight? You know, that depends a lot of things, R.L. Sanders. I mean, it depends on what kind of breeding stock you've got. If you've got good rabbits that are going to demand a premium price, or if you've just got run-of-the-mill meat mutts, like mixed breeds, and you're just selling them for meat. Around here, rabbits very seldom ever go for over $10 to $15 a rabbit, and most of the time, I mean, it's rare. So, you know, by the time you get to that point, I mean, you probably got $5 in the rabbit at least, you know, so you're not making a lot of money off of it. Now, if you've got good quality stock, you know, purebred, registered, you know, pedigreed New Zealand whites or Californias or something like that, and you're breeding purebred rabbits, then you might be able to sell them for $25 or $30. But again, it just depends. I'm not the best person to ask about that. I don't think it's worth it, in my opinion, to try to raise them. You'd have to go very, very big operation and have fairly reliable Sanders, but that, or sellers, I should say. I looked at Walt's comment to R.L. Sanders, and I got your name on there. What he says is, it depends on how much you can sell them and how, and yeah, and for how much, right? The hard part of it, it will profitable. Yeah, the hard part of it will profitable. Will it be profitable? You might not. It just depends on the market in your area. Lots of different things. I can't answer it for you, unfortunately. The Garrison says, my quail stopped laying when we got a heat wave here in California. They picked back up a week later after adjusting. Yeah, sometimes that, like I said, drastic weather changes can do that too. So, all right. I don't know what the Garrison are in the Newcastle disease quarantine zone. Oh, my quail stopped laying when they got the heat wave. Okay, are in the Newcastle disease quarantine zone. All right, got to get this wrapped up, guys. And before I go, I'm gonna have to stop answering the comments. Sorry if I didn't get your answer or your question answered. Thank you all for joining tonight. I very much appreciate that. And before I go, I do want to say thank you to, I don't know who, one of my viewers actually bought me some eggs from Kansas City Quail Farm. They're in the mail. They're coming. So I'll be incubating some eggs. But one of my viewers, all they said was, one of my fans. That's all they said. And they bought me some eggs. I had Kansas City Quail Farm reach out to me. Naomi are there. You know, like I said, they're great people. I always recommend Kansas City Quail Farms when you go to order eggs. And apparently they just decided they wanted to buy me some eggs. So I got some eggs coming from an unknown. I don't know who it was, but whoever it was, thank you very much. It was a very kind gesture. I appreciate that. Sorry I can't get to any more comments, guys, but I got to wrap this up. I got to go spend some time with the family before bed. One more day, and then we got the weekend coming. And it's supposed to storm all weekend long. Possibly severe storms on Saturday, which, if you guys know anything about Southwest Missouri, Joplin area, you know, we had, we're coming up on, what is it, 11-year anniversary? Saturday is actually the memorial run of the Joplin tornado, which was, you know, huge disaster. I mean, big tornado. So, you know, severe storms coming on Saturday always makes everybody a little bit nervous. Pray for us. I'm sure we'll be fine. God watches out for us. But thank you all for joining tonight. I appreciate that. God bless each and every one of you. Have a